Hey everyone, welcome to Dangerous Werewolf. Are you brave enough to step into the perilous world of werewolves with me? Here, we'll uncover the secrets, face the fears, and explore the thrilling and dangerous aspects of these mythical creatures. So hold on tight and let's start this wild adventure together. To escape a possessive mate. Photo of Nora. I remember that day so clearly, like it was burnt into my mind. January 26, 2000, the day that vampires and werewolves made their existence known to the entire world. It was rather scary, actually. I just remember it was night and the TV was blasting loudly from the living room. I got out of bed, being sure to tiptoe so as not to let my parents know I was awake. There was a man on the TV speaking in a nervous tone, his face flushed. The president has urged everyone to stay inside and to secure all windows and doors. Nora, what are you doing up so late? My father asked. I jumped and spun around to see that he was behind me. He must have been in the bathroom when I left my room. Why do we have to stay inside? I asked. It was making me nervous, the way the reporter's voice quivered with every word he said. I wanted to go to school the next day. We were supposed to have a field trip to the aquarium. It was meant to be the highlight of my kindergarten year. My dad smiled down at me. Relax, sweetie. There's just something wrong, but we'll fix it. Don't worry. No, my mom interrupted him. She should see this too. My dad sighed, but led me into the living room where I took a seat in between my parents. My mom was biting the nails on her left hand, while the right was rubbing her swollen belly where my little brother lived. I turned my attention back to the TV. The reporter was in a building that had a bunch of people crowding a stage where two men were standing at a podium. That's the president and the general, my dad whispered into my ear. The president cleared his throat into the microphone and began speaking. Let me make this clear to every citizen. We will not live in fear because of these creatures. I assure you we will fight for our right to live without fear. The crowd applauded him. What's happening? I asked again. My mom patted my shoulder. They found some monsters, she whispered. My dad squeezed my other shoulder. Don't worry, he said. We'll take care of this. The reporter then faced the camera and began to speak again. Now we're getting word of the press conference in California where the leader of the Sonoma County Coven is speaking. The picture on the TV switched to a different crowd. The man on this podium had really white skin, almost like a marshmallow. He smiled at the crowd, his teeth sharp like a monster's, but that was only distinguishing monster quality about him. My friends, he said in a soothing voice that put me at ease. I can assure you that we mean no harm. We vampires and werewolves just simply want the same rights to live without fear as humans do. We mean no harm. We're perfectly safe. My mom shut off the TV. That blood-sucking liar, she muttered. She then turned to me and grabbed both my shoulders. Listen to me, Nora. If you ever get approached by a person with fangs, run. Don't talk to them. You run. Understand? I nodded, unsure where all this was coming from. 12 years later, the humans lost their fight against the vampires and werewolves. Luckily for us, the vampires and werewolves weren't vengeful, nor did they seek to put us under them. They wanted to have the same rights as humans, so they allowed us to keep our rights. With a few minor exceptions, humans were forced to choose between vampire and werewolf. Those who chose vampire were counted as members of a coven, and werewolf supporters were counted as members of a pack. The covens and packs each took a county and ruled it. There are still some human communities, but most of them are in the sunny regions of the world, where the vampires wouldn't be able to easily survive and the werewolves would get overheated. My family had tried to flee to Florida where my grandmother lived, but we were stuck in our town, which counted as werewolf territory. We registered as part of the pack, not being bitten or anything, which my mom was extremely grateful for. The werewolf children started to attend school with us human children, which caused many human families to attempt to illegally leave the area. Many of them didn't like the fact that werewolves considered the pack to be a lifetime obligation. I was told of stories about people who would run away from the pack or coven, only to be hunted down by the trackers of that territory and be forced back as a member of the lowest rank. For vampires, it was as a blood slave. For werewolves, it was as an omega. My family had tried to put up with the werewolves as best as possible, though we didn't want to. We kept to ourselves, rarely venturing out of our house so as to avoid any contact. It was also really easy to tell who wasn't human. Vampires, for one, could only come out at night and had deathly pale skin. Plus, their teeth looked jagged. Werewolves were harder to identify. Their canine teeth were significantly larger, and the males usually had longer sideburns. And that was it. However, soon we got used to putting up with them. That is, until the first human in our territory got mated to a wolf. Her name was Danny, and she was in my class at the time. We were in the 6th grade in our math class when one of the werewolf policemen came in and called out her name. Danny looked scared beyond belief, yet she raised her hand. The werewolf dragged her out, and outside we could hear another wolf sound, all relieved to see her. But Danny just screamed and cried. The alpha of the territory had called a mandatory pack meeting, which was held in the town hall. He told us that it's uncommon for a werewolf to mate with a human, but that it does happen. And that if one of us humans were lucky enough to be mated, then we have no choice but to obey our werewolf mate. Werewolves and vampires mate for life. Once they see their mate, they instantly become obsessed with them and do whatever they can to get them. I hate this stupid world. Now I'm a senior in high school, and in my werewolf history class, all I can think of is how desperately I want to go to one of the human communities. I just continue to thank God every day that I haven't been mated, meaning photo of Vincent. The bell rang for all of us to go to the last period of the day. For me, this was P, or more correctly termed, human P. The werewolves had a separate PE class from us because obviously they were a lot stronger, faster, and just all around more muscular than us humans. Our PE teacher was a werewolf, and one could easily tell he with how weak we humans were. He blew on the whistle, telling us all to assemble on the track that was outside, circling the football field. In the middle of the field was the werewolf class. I noticed Kyle, the football quarterback. He was by far the strongest guy at our school and had yet to find a mate. Some of the human girls who weren't faithful to their species were drooling at his feet. I grimaced. He's basically a dog. What? Does he drink out of toilets? I laughed at my joke. Coach blew his whistle. Miss, whatever your last name is, can you hurry up so your fellow human classmates can get the mile? I nodded and hurried over to the starting point. Check it out. Kyle's looking over here. My friend Jessie whispered into my ear. I frowned at her. Doesn't bother you that every full moon he turns into a dog? So werewolves can phase into their wolf form at will, even if there's not a full moon out. However, humans were warned that on full moons, werewolves get more primal than normal and will attack whatever it perceives to be a threat. Poor Danny. She was told that her werewolf mate would be even more possessive on a full moon. Every full moon she stayed home from school because her mate refused to let her leave his side. Jessie shook her head. I like to think of it more as having a pet boy than aiding a dog, she mused. At that, Kyle really did turn to face us, giving us a snarl. Damn his werewolf hearing. Nevertheless, Jessie and I burst into hysterics. I was really surprised with Jessie. She wasn't at all afraid of werewolves, in fact. She wanted to be chosen as a mate. She said it'd be like finding her soulmate. Plus, she wouldn't have to worry about him cheating on her. No, instead she'd have to worry about getting fleas. That thought got me thinking. Jessie, I whispered, Extra low so the werewolves wouldn't hear us. Is the werewolf version of crabs. Fleas. Jessie stood in thought. I would think so. She pondered. Coach blew the whistle, telling us to start our run. Try to make it less than 20 minutes, humans. He roared. Jessie and I gravitated towards the center of the track so as to kind of make our mile shorter by the rules of geometry. We ran for a while, not even completing our first lap when we began to walk. Whatever, we figured that, due to Alpha's orders, werewolves aren't allowed to harm humans in school. Therefore, Coach wouldn't be able to punish us too severely. So you fill out your application to the college yet? Jessie panted, already out of breath. Yeah, we're out of shape. Jessie was referring to the only college in our territory. It was expected of all the werewolves and humans to attend this college because of pack rules. It was simple, really. It's in the territory, so you go to it. I shook my head. Jessie frowned. You know the deadline is in 3 weeks. And that essay is hard. It's all about how you feel your life has become better thanks to the emergence of werewolves in your area. I had trouble thinking about a thesis, so I just said I appreciate the increased security. There was an increase in security when the werewolves took control of the county. I call them the werewolf police, although in the werewolf hierarchy, they're technically known as trackers. They monitor the borders, making sure no vampires get in, and no humans get out. I was thinking about applying to Miami. I lied. Sometimes Alpha will let humans go to different territories when education or a family emergency is involved. They kind of count as like a tourist and are expected to return at a set date. All I have to do is schedule a meeting with Alpha and bring my transcript that shows my high grades in my science classes. If God loves me that day, then Alpha will agree and let me go to Florida, a human community. Then when my time is up and I have to return back to my territory, I'll just go to some place where there are no werewolves or vampires. There's a rumor that South Africa wasn't affected by their emergence. Jessie looked at me, her eyes wide and mouth hanging low. Nora, Devilrich, Nora, she hissed. You can get in a lot of trouble if you leave the territory. We both stopped and looked at Coach to see he had overheard our conversation. There was no indication he did. His eyes were glued to his clipboard. We looked over at the werewolf class. Everyone was running around, I think playing soccer. However, they were moving too fast so it was hard to tell. Relax, I said, starting to walk again. I'm gonna ask Alpha for permission before I go. What if he says no? I bit my lip. I'll apply to the college here just in case then. I lied. If Alpha refused my application to leave, then I'll just have to sneak out. Our territory actually has one of the highest successful escape numbers. In total, 2 people have ran away and never been found. It's rumored that they died on their way out though. Jessie smiled and kept up with my pace. We finished our mile in 20 minutes, much to Coach's agitation. Slow-ass humans, he growled. I shrugged it off. As soon as I graduate and leave this place, I'll never look back and then I'll be free of these stupid mutts. Coach blew the whistle, telling us all to go to the locker rooms and get changed because the period was close to ending. 1 hour way back to the locker room, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned and, to my dismay, saw Kyle walking behind me. Sup, Nora? He smiled, showing off his huge canines. His giant fang-like teeth sent shivers down my spine. If there was one physical aspect I hate about werewolves, it's their canines. Hi, I mumbled. Hi, turning my gaze forward. I was only about 1 minute away from the girls' locker room. Why did Kyle have to catch me now? So I was wondering. Kyle began, moving so that he was in front of me, walking backwards. There's this new horror movie playing tomorrow at the theaters, and I wanted to know if you and Jessie would like to come with me and Josh. I shook my head. There's no way in hell that I'd ever hang out with a werewolf. No thanks. I'm busy. Kyle put on a fake frown. Come on, Nora. You know you should take full advantage before I find a mate, he said, trying to wiggle his eyebrows seductively. I have a boyfriend. I lied. Again. Damn. I'm a regular Pinocchio today. Kyle eyed me suspiciously, totally challenging my made-up boyfriend. What's his name? I rolled my eyes. You're not Alpha. I don't have answer to you. Well then, Kyle mused. I could just mention that you've never met my friend Josh, who doesn't have a mate either. Kyle smirked, knowing that he got me. Unmated werewolves had priority over humans. I was sort of required now to meet Josh if he demanded to see me just in case to see if we were, God forbid, mates. Plus, if a human is in a relationship and gets chosen to be a werewolf's mate, then the human has to end the relationship. If they're married, though, then the human has the right to stay with their spouse, but it's likely that the werewolf will either try to kidnap their mate or kill the spouse. Plus, a mated werewolf is forbidden to be in a relationship with anyone but their mate. If that were possible, werewolves become completely obsessed with their mates. Tell Josh to call me if he really wants to see me, then I'll think about it, I said. I finally reached the locker room and rushed inside to get away from Kyle. My locker was at the back of the room next to Danny's. Hi, Nora, Danny said when she saw me. She took off her gym shirt, allowing me to see the bite mark that her mate put on her shoulder, signifying that she's taken. Hi, Danny, I mumbled, a little scared to talk to her, lest her mate get jealous of our semi-friendship. Danny sensed this and quickly got changed so that she could leave. Ever since Danny got chosen to be a mate, people grew afraid of her mate's possessiveness. I got dressed in my regular clothes and went out of the locker room to wait in the hallway for the remaining 3 minutes of Thursday at school. Jessie soon left the locker room and walked up to me. I was just told by Enria that there's a new PE coach. Old coach is getting fired. That's why he was in a bad mood. Well, extra bad mood today, she said. Are they human? I asked, hoping with all my might that I'd have a human teacher this year. Jessie shook her head. No, he's a werewolf. He's actually the beta, to be. That sucks. Danny walked out of the locker room and up to a werewolf girl named Vanessa. The two of them started to talk like friends, Vanessa probably gaining points from her mate because she's a werewolf and a girl. Excuse me, girls. I'm looking for the principal's office. I'm going to be your new PE coach, a deep voice said from behind us. Jessie's phone buzzed in her pocket, so she gave her attention to that, leaving it up to me to answer the voice behind me. I turned around, seeing a muscular chest at first, then looking up to see a face. The man had dark, black hair with messy and ice blue eyes that looked as if they could stab into the souls of others they were piercing. His canines were huge, showing off his werewolf fierciness. As I stared at his eyes, I could see them widen, most likely to gauge my threat level. You go down this hall, then take a left at the water fountain, and keep going down that hall. There's a door on your right that should lead to a bunch of the administrative offices, and then from there the secretary can guide you, I said. I was actually really proud of how well I can give directions. The man just kept standing in front of me, staring with his mouth hanging open. Perhaps he didn't hear me. You go down this hall and then take a left. I finally found you, the man said, a wide smile creeping up on his face. I cocked my eyebrow. Where was this wolf going with this? I'm Vincent, he said. I'm your mate. Talking. I stared up into the face of this Vincent werewolf who was now claiming that I'm his mate. There's no way I can be the mate to a werewolf. It's impossible. He's got to be joking. I scanned his face to see if he was just messing with me. Vincent stared at my face with longing in his eyes, his mouth at a wide smile. His whole face was alight with zeal, like he had just won the lottery. "Mate," he breathed, reaching out with his arm, as if to touch me. My body was trembling. Shit. I can't be a werewolf's mate. I can't be stuck here in this territory. I'm supposed to be running away to Miami. I meant to live with humans, not werewolf monsters. I quickly moved from his reach. "Sorry," I quickly muttered. "You've got the wrong person." I ran back into the girls' locker room, where the male werewolf wouldn't be able to follow me. I frantically looked around for another exit that I'd be able to escape that stupid werewolf through. I can't be his mate. Tears began to well up in my eyes, and I grabbed at my hair. What do I do? What will my parents say? They hate werewolves. There's no way they'll want me to be mated to one. I'll be kicked out, and I won't be allowed to live on the streets because my supposed mate will make me live with him. The tears were freely flowing down my face. I slumped behind a row of lockers, sitting with my head in my hands, my butt on the cold cement floor. The door to the locker opened up and I heard petite footsteps approaching me. There's no way a giant werewolf like Vincent could walk so quietly, so this had to be someone else. "Nora?" Danny asked. She stopped where I was, based on the fact that the sounds of her feet stopped at my side. "Vincent sent me in here because he heard you crying. He wants to know what's wrong and when you're coming out because he wants to talk to you." I looked up at Danny, fairly sure I looked like a mess. I sniffed and felt snot shoot back up into my nose. Gross. I motioned for her to get closer to me. She sat beside me and I leaned into her so I could whisper in her ear. That way Vincent wouldn't be able to hear us. "Danny, I'm so scared," I sobbed. "I don't want to be mated." More tears streamed down my face and the shock really started to settle in. My life isn't my own life anymore. It's Vincent's. He owns me. Danny frowned at me. "You know, being a werewolf's mate isn't that bad," she whispered. "He'll take care of you and make you feel so safe." I shook my head. "I don't want that though," I cried, not even bothering to whisper anymore. "I want Vincent to know that I don't want him." Danny patted my shoulder. I paused and looked at her. "Can I reject the bond? I don't feel it. So that must mean that I'm not really his mate, right?" I asked, hope seeping into my core. Danny shook her head. "Sorry, Nora. Humans don't feel the bond like werewolves. We gradually fall in love. Theirs is immediate and amplified." She took out her phone and started to text someone, her fingers rapidly tapping the keys. She looked a little nervous, every now and then glancing around the row of lockers to make sure no one had entered the locker room to get us. When she stopped, she handed me her phone so I could read the text. "Just give Vincent a chance," she said. "You may find that." I froze when I read the text that was totally the opposite of what she was saying to me. "If you really don't want to be Vincent's mate, my mate's sister actually specializes in helping humans hide from their werewolf mates. It's 500, but she knows how to make you disappear. Just be warned that if you decide to go through with it, Vincent will stop at nothing to get you back. Maybe you should just accept Vincent. You never know." Danny finished. She narrowed her eyes at me, telling me to keep quiet. I nodded and erased the message from her phone. "Where?" I whispered. "Come to my house tomorrow after school and I'll introduce you to. But it may take a few weeks to get everything all prepped." She whispered back, barely audible. "Why didn't you leave then?" I wondered. Danny smiled. "Reed treats me wonderfully." She stood up and offered me her hand. "Just smile and get it over with." Danny led me over to the exit, where Vincent stood on the other side of the door. "All I have to do is wait a couple of weeks and then I'll be able to escape and live in Miami, free from werewolves." Danny was the first to leave the locker room. I stayed inside for a few seconds, taking a couple deep breaths to prepare myself for the ordeal that was to come. You can do this, I told myself, slowly opening the locker room door. As soon as I took one step out, I was enveloped in a pair of muscular arms, being brought into a muscled chest. Vincent held me close to him, burying his face in my hair and inhaling deeply. "Why are you sad, mate?" he asked, slowly rocking back and forth, as if to comfort me. "This is a happy occasion. We finally have each other." I looked around the hall. Everyone had already left, even Jesse. Apparently Vincent was the only one who actually waited for me. He pulled back to look me over, his eyes scanning over every feature of my body, making me glad that I was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and jeans. I looked over Vincent as well, to see how scary he is. He was freakishly tall, and muscled as well. His tight t-shirt strained over his chest and his biceps were poking out of the sleeves. He wore tight blue jeans, which matched mine in color. Now that I think of it, our shirts are the same color as well. A high WW, that's gross. Vincent seemed to like what he saw because he soon wrapped an arm around my waist and was leading me down the hall and outside, into the parking lot. "I can always talk with the principal tomorrow," he told me. "I'm sure he'll understand given the circumstances." Once again, Vincent shoved his face at me, but this time he nuzzled my face, rubbing his stubble-covered cheek up against mine. I didn't do anything back. I just let myself be dragged away. Vincent stopped in his tracks and let out a low growl, the sound vibrating his chest, and consequently me since I was kept so close. He turned and looked down at me, his blue eyes flashing yellow for a brief second. "My wolf just reminded me to get your name, mate," he said, before that huge grin reappeared on his face, showing off his canines. They sure were pointy. Vincent then cleared his throat. "Mate." I shook my head, escaping the trance his fangs put on me. "What?" He smiled again. "I want to know your name. Like, mine's Vincent and Tabin." "Oh," I said. "I'm Nora Song." Vincent began to lead me to wherever he was going in the parking lot. He seemed to muse over something for a while. "Nora Abin," he finally said aloud. "It has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Oh God, he did not just attach his last name to me already. I decided not to answer his question. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "I'm going to drive you home, that way you can introduce me to your parents," Vincent said as he stopped in front of a black pickup truck. It didn't have a back seat and it looked like it was the perfect size for just two people, keeping them close to one another. "Damn it, why do we have to tell my parents?" I asked, my heart picking up speed with just the thought of my parents finding out that a werewolf chose me as his mate. Vincent cocked his eyebrow and opened the passenger side door for me. "Why not?" he asked. "No reason." I lied, knowing that he'd lash out if I told him that my family, including me, hates werewolves. "What are you hiding from me?" Vincent asked, practically shoving me into the truck. I blushed when he even did my seatbelt for me. What am I? 5. He slammed the door shut and I briefly considered locking him out. However, where would that get me? He has the keys and the strength of a beta werewolf. He can rip this whole truck in half, including me, in a matter of seconds. Vincent got in on the driver's side and started up the truck. Then he turned to look at me. "Well," he asked, "I don't know what you mean. What aren't you telling me?" he demanded, getting a little closer to me. He completely dwarfed me in the truck. "Why don't you want to introduce me to your parents? Come on, Nora. You can think up a lie. You've been doing it all day. It's a human thing." You see, I don't really know you, and therefore, I won't be able to correctly introduce you to my parents. I guess that sounds believable. What do you want to know? He asked as he began to pull out of the parking space. I shook my head. I'd rather know nothing and just have Vincent get back to reality and let me out of this truck so I can leave. But we all know that's not happening. I stared out the window, trying to come up with a question when I felt Vincent drape his arm over my shoulders, pulling me towards his body. I can smell your fear, he said. I looked up at him in shock. Vincent staring at me with that admiring look that had love painted all over it. Gross. Nora, I just want you to know that this is all new to me as well. Left or right? I pointed to the right, and I want you to know that before today, I had no idea that I would fall insanely in love with the girl next to me now. He leaned down and pecked my forehead, making me scrunch up my face. On impulse, I raised my arm to wipe the kiss off my forehead with my sleeve. As soon as I did, however, a ferocious snarl erupted from Vincent and he slammed on the brakes, making me jerk in my seat. He grabbed both my shoulders and forced me to look at him, his eyes switching from blue to yellow again. I'm in trouble. Arrangements. Have you ever wished that you'd just taken 3 seconds to think something over in your head before you followed through on an action? Well, I could have answered no before, exactly 3 seconds ago. However, within those fateful 3 seconds, I was kissed on the forehead by an obsessive werewolf and I foolishly wiped it off. Now why did I do that? Well, it's simple really, I hate werewolves. And now, thanks to my reflexes, I'm currently in a death grip, staring a monster in the face. That monster's name is Vincent, and he claims to be my mate. Now, as he's glaring at me, his eyes yellow and his teeth bared, showing off his snarl of disapproval, all I can concentrate on is how stupid I was to allow myself to get in his truck with him in the first place. I could have refused. I could have ran. Now there's a thought. Why on earth didn't I to run away? Vincent tightened his grip on my shoulders, making me flinch with pain. For a brief moment, a look of guilt passed over his face, but it was gone so quickly that I questioned if it was even there in the first place. Mate, he growled, his deep voice sounding guttural and threatening. Don't ever refuse my affection. He pushed his face closer and closer to mine, most likely moving in to put another kiss on my forehead. However, he didn't go towards my face. Instead, he moved his head towards my left shoulder. What are you doing? I whimpered, pretty sure that I already had an idea. Please don't let him do what I think he's going to do, Vincent chuckled. He pulled my shirt to the side so that my shoulder was exposed to him. I need to claim you so that others know you're mine, I shouted, putting my hand on his head and pushing it back. No, that's not happening. If I was claimed as a mate, then the only way I'd ever get a chance at leaving this territory would be with his permission, which of course would mean I'd never leave. Vincent growled and pulled the keys out of the ignition, leaving us stranded on the side of the road. There were no other cars out. Go figure. I'm just not having a good day today. I grabbed at my hair and shoved my head back on the headrest, which hurt because it was hard. Look at me, mate, Vincent ordered. I ignored him, going over the options that I had. So far, I couldn't think of any. Mate, he growled. Slowly, I opened my eyes and turned to face him. Yes, I asked in a fake cheery voice. Then it hit me. We were pulled over on the side of the road. All I had to do was open the door and run with all my might. Sure, there's no doubt in my mind that Vincent would follow me, but we're in a suburban area now, houses surrounding the road. All I had to do was yell and scream. The best part was that because he didn't mark me yet, There was really no absolute way to prove that I was chosen to be his mate. I can tell some werewolf passively that Vincent was crazy and then he'll either get banished or demoted to Omega. It's perfect. Plus I wouldn't have to wait a few weeks for Danny's mate's sister to follow through. Vincent was looking at me with a very angry expression on his face. Something tells me you don't like being my mate, he growled. Well, it's only been 10 minutes. So how about you cut me some slack? Okay. I nodded, leaning forward a little so that my body blocked his view of the door handle. Slowly but surely I inched my hand to it, blindly feeling for it as I kept my gaze fixed on Vincent, who continued talking. Look, he sighed, his eyes turning back to their normal blue color. I'm sorry for losing it back there. But you need to understand that when you're involved, I feel this intense need to have you with me. I nodded again. My hand felt something cool and oblong. The door handle. I wrapped my fingers around it, ready to escape. Vincent still had his eyes stuck on me, his smile starting to creep back up. You know, and this isn't the mating bond talking, but I don't think I'd ever seen a woman as beautiful as you, he mused. Once again, I just nodded, knowing that I'd have to come up with a reason for him to look away before I could escape. Thinking quickly, I pretended like I was looking at something out his window, scrunching up my face at the imaginary object. Vincent cocked his eyebrow and looked the other way, totally falling for it. I yanked on the door handle, the door cracking open. When the door was pulled shut by Vincent and he wrapped both his arms around my waist. He was behind me, invisible from my eyes, but when he spoke, I could tell he leaned down to my ear, his hot breath moistening my cheek. Now let's think this over real quick. Mate, he purred, his voice low and almost a whisper. The average human runs, let's say, about 15 miles per hour. Now the average werewolf runs at 50 miles per hour. And let's pretend that miraculously you made it out of the truck. Each of his words sent shivers down my spine, making me feel uncomfortable. I prayed that he'd let me live, which I knew was stupid. A werewolf would never kill their mate, but they sure could scare the crap out of them. Mate, if you made it down to the end of the block, which is around 100 feet, that means it took you roughly 4:54 seconds to travel that distance. Now, when I follow you, it'll take me only 1:36 seconds to travel that same distance. So let me ask you, do you really want to risk that? I shook my head, in awe at his mathematical feat. That's my girl, Vincent cooed, pecking me on the cheek before he leaned back a little. I heard a slight chuckle before I felt an intense pain in my left shoulder. The pain radiated all throughout my body, making me scream with agony. Vincent held me in place as I thrashed my body around, trying to shake his jaws off my body. He bit through my shirt, letting my blood stain it as it oozed out. After a few seconds, Vincent finally stopped biting and leaned back, tugging on my shirt to expose my shoulder. I was crying by now, both at the intense pain of having my skin pierced by werewolf fangs and the fact that I was claimed as his mate. It's too late now. He owns me. I'll make it feel better, mate, Vincent cooed. He began to lick at my bite mark with his tongue, lapping up my blood, cleaning my wound. At first it stung, but soon the pain miraculously disappeared, turning into a dull throb and eventually being gone altogether. I looked down at my shoulder, already seeing a scar in the shape of a bite mark. What the? I wondered. Vincent laughed. Bet you didn't know that. Werewolves can heal their mates' flesh wounds with their saliva. Just their mates. I asked, my voice quivering. Vincent nodded, so close to me that his cheek rubbed up against my face. It just goes to show how much I can take care of you, don't you think? My eyes were trained on my bite mark. Am I going to be a werewolf now? I whimpered, my bottom lip quivering at the worry of becoming a monster. No, Vincent said, actually sounded a bit saddened by that. You need to be born werewolf. Sorry, mate. You're stuck human. I fought hard to fight the smile forming on my face. I'm staying human. But luckily for you, Vincent carried on, you now have a werewolf by your side. You have one of the strongest, fastest species totally devoted to you. Yeah, that's so wonderful. I rolled my eyes. Vincent started the truck back up and started to drive again, his hand back around my shoulders. So just because I don't like to see my mate happy, I won't force you to introduce me to your parents. At least, not today, he said. My heart began to slow down in relief. At least my parents will love me for the remaining time that I get to keep Vincent a secret. I gave him the rest of the directions to my house, and he pulled up in front of it in a matter of minutes. Which one's your window? He asked as he parked along the sidewalk. Oh, that one. I pointed to my bedroom window that was on the second story, unsure why he would ask such a thing. Vincent nodded. Good. I'll get you at 11. I jerked in my seat, shooting to look at him in disbelief. What are you talking about? I almost shouted. Vincent looked at me like I was the crazy one. Mate, you can't possibly expect me to sleep alone, can you? Especially when I have someone to protect through the night. He stared at me, his blue drunk with love and need. Vincent, what do you think people at school will say when they find out you took me from my house to sleep with you? I interrogated. I had no intention of telling anybody at school about my condition. I was hoping we could keep this all a secret, and then I'd escape to Miami. Vincent growled. If anyone makes fun of you, you let me know and I'll take of them, he said, clenching the steering wheel tightly in his fist. I furiously shook my head. No, Vincent, I'm not having sex with you. Vincent looked at me incredulously. Mate, cooed, rubbing my cheek with his calloused hand. When we do have sex, we'll call it making love. And I mean sleeping with you by my side. It'll be next to impossible for me to fall asleep without you with me. Take Ambien. Vincent growled again. I'll let you off for tonight only, he said through his teeth. But tomorrow I'm taking you home with me after school. Deal? All I need is one day to escape on my own. Deal? I said. Vincent then smiled. Then I'll see you tomorrow, mate. I'll pick you up. He brought me into his arms and kissed my forehead again. I got out of the truck and walked up to the front door, Vincent watching me the entire time. I could feel his eyes drilling into my back. I took my key out of my pocket, unlocked the door, and quickly went inside. Vincent honked goodbye as he drove off after making sure I was inside my house. Who gave you a ride? My mom asked from the living room couch. She was sitting watching some soap opera. Why aren't you at work? I quivered, standing so that my left shoulder was away from her, that way she wouldn't see the streaks of blood in my shirt. Your brother has the flu, so be prepared to catch it, she mumbled. I just nodded and ran upstairs to change. Later that night. Luckily, my parents didn't notice my blood-stained shirt as I threw it in the trash. It was a relief not to have them hate me for being associated with a werewolf. They would disown me if they ever found out that Vincent was forcing me to be his mate. I was now in my bedroom getting ready to fall asleep. I lied down on my bed, resting my head on the pillow when I heard the howl of a wolf. Oh God, I muttered, already knowing what was up. I shuffled to my window, looking out at the forest behind my block. It was rather close, allowing me to see it easily. As I stared at the trees, I saw the glowing yellow eyes that belonged to Vincent, watching me. I can't even sleep without him watching me too. This sucks. I rolled my eyes, walking away from the window to lie back down. Vincent gave out one more howl and then allowed me to fall asleep. He was most likely making sure I wouldn't run off anywhere in the night, which did sound like a good idea. The morning I didn't get much sleep that night. All that kept running through my mind were the events of the horrific day, shouting out at me that I was now technically property of a werewolf. Oh, and get this, he's my new PE coach. Excellent. I peeled my eyes open at the shrill ink screams of my stupid alarm clock. Groaning, I rolled over and slapped the top of it, eventually hitting the stop button. When it was silenced, I lied in my bed, staring at the ceiling. Unfortunately, I didn't catch whatever my brother, who was now coughing his lungs out, had. Life's a bitch. Nora, hurry up or you'll miss the bus, my mom said as she knocked on my door. Remembering Vincent's demand that he drive me to school this morning, I winced. Jesse's mom is giving us a ride this morning. I lied. Make sure you thank her, my mom called as she walked off to comfort my brother. Like a zombie, thank God they're not real. I think I slowly crawled out of my room and made it to the bathroom. I didn't feel like taking too long of a shower this morning, so I just washed my hair this morning. Maybe Vincent will smell my natural human scent and be disgusted. A girl can only hope. I made sure to get dressed in the most boring clothes I own, plain blue jeans and a plain black long-sleeved shirt. I even put my hair up in a boring ponytail. Maybe Vincent will be turned off by how normal and uneventful I am. I thumped my feet down the stairs, my backpack dangling from my right shoulder. I had noticed the bite mark Vincent gave me when I was taking a shower, fighting with myself not to scream with anger. My plan was to just sit on the sofa, watching TV and eating cereal, while I waited for my doom to arrive when I heard a loud honk outside. I'm leaving, I shouted as I got off the couch and walked to the door. Already. My mom called from upstairs. School doesn't start for an hour. Damn, Vincent. We're getting breakfast. That was good enough for my mom, who remained silent. Sure enough, as soon as I opened my front door, there was Vincent's black truck in front of my house. I saw Vincent inside, bouncing up and down like an excited kid. What a nerd. He opened the door for me from the inside, giving me a look that told me to hurry up. I fast walked to the truck and reluctantly hopped in, shutting the door, sealing off my escape. For now. As soon as I was inside, I was wrapped in Vincent's strong embrace. He nuzzled me, his chest vibrating with what I assumed was like a purr. Good morning, mate, he happily said. He held on to me for a while before starting the car back up and driving off. I noticed that he was trying to impress me with his looks. He wore a black polo shirt that strained across his massive chest muscles, none of the 3 buttons at the top done. His biceps seemed to bulge out of the sleeves, being too big to be confined in fabric. He wore those jeans that looked worn, the kind a working man wears. He appeared to have styled his hair, attempting to look like he hadn't spent a few moments working on it. The bedhead spiked look. Well, unfortunately for him, I don't find dogs that sexy. We began to drive off down the street, when he took a right instead of left. Where are we going? I asked him. Vincent had a wide smile on his face and his arm around me shoulders, keeping me close to his warm body. I figured I'd treat you to some breakfast before school. I'm gonna take you to that one diner near the highway, he answered. Vincent was referring to Bill's Diner, a diner that was run exclusively by werewolves, meant to serve food up to werewolf standards. That just meant more meat products and larger portions. I just nodded, uncomfortable in this tight closeness with the obsessed werewolf. The whole drive there, Vincent didn't turn on the radio once. We rode on in awkward silence. Well, awkward for me at least. Vincent was perfectly content, looking over at me every now and then, that smile plastered on his face, his fangs pointing out over his bottom lip a little bit. I tried not to squirm under his admiring eye, totally aware of the fact that he was 10,000 times stronger than me and could do anything he wanted. Eventually we reached the diner, and Vincent was all too eager to act like a gentleman by rushed out of the truck to open my door for me. That or he was making sure I wouldn't try to run away from him. He put his arm around my waist and led me inside the diner, where we took a booth near the back window, away from the other werewolf customers. I couldn't help but notice that when we entered the diner, Vincent's hold on me tightened and I could have sworn I heard him growl a little. But maybe I was just imagining it. I slid into the booth, expecting Vincent to be like most normal beings and take the side opposite me, but instead he slid into the side as me, trapping me. "What sounds good to you?" Vincent asked as he picked up a menu and handed it to me, not even bothering to get one himself. Instead, he read mine over my shoulder. I shrugged, shuddering as his breath warmed my neck. "You can get whatever you want, mate," he whispered, nuzzling my neck once more. So now he's trying to buy my affection with food. A waiter walked up to us, obviously werewolf. Vincent growled a little, keeping it low, but I could feel it vibrate his body. "What can you guys to drink?" the waiter asked us, ignoring Vincent's hostile attitude. "I'll have an orange juice," I said. The waiter's eyes grew wide and he looked at me like I had grown another head. Perhaps they didn't have orange juice or something. The waiter looked at Vincent, a scared look on his face. Vincent looked pissed, his fists tightly clenched, his teeth grinding. He took a few deep breaths and looked at the waiter. "My mate will have an orange juice." "Give me a coffee." "Black." He all but growled at the guy. The waiter shyly nodded and hurried off behind the counter to get our drinks. "Mate," Vincent quietly growled at Mihan. I looked at him from the sugar packet I was playing with in my hands. "What is it?" Vincent got a little closer to me, having both his arms wrapped around me. "Mate, it's considered wrong when a mate talks to another male werewolf." I cocked my eyebrow. I was getting a drink. "I know that, but next time, you speak to other male werewolves for me. Got it?" he asked, his tone becoming less forceful. "No, I don't got it," I scoffed, finding the last shred of courage I had hidden somewhere behind my pancreas. Vincent jumped back a little, shocked by my attitude. He composed his surprised face and let out a warning growl. "I have werewolf teachers," I clarified, "some of them male, like my chemistry teacher." Once again, I earned a growl from Vincent. Before he could say anything, though, a waitress this time came over to our table, setting down our drinks in front of us. "Have you decided on anything to order?" she asked us. I rolled my eyes. "Vincent, tell the waitress I want the cheese omelet." I turned my gaze away so that I could look outside. There was nothing eventful going on. The weather was bland. There were no cool cars driving by. Nothing. Vincent sighed. "My maid will have the cheese omelet and I'll have the supreme omelet." "Sure thing," the waitress said, sounding very uncomfortable around us. She walked off and Vincent tapped my shoulder. "Mate, I didn't mean to say you couldn't talk to anyone besides me, just other males." He cooed, as if that were supposed to make me feel better. Who was this guy? Why on earth did he think that not even 24 hours after meeting him, that he could control who I associate with? I'm so fed up with this mate nonsense. I just want to leave this diner, leave Vincent, and leave this whole stupid werewolf territory. We were silent after that, me too mad to say anything and Vincent trying to think of something to say that would make me feel better. Every now and then he'd perk up as if he thought of something, but would then sag, determining that it wouldn't help. Before long, he just settled on resting his head on my shoulders. You know, he said in a slow voice, gauging my reaction. When I first phased, I was so pissed. I stopped sulking for a while and listened to his story. I think 13. Yay, it was 12 years ago. I was 13. And I had just got this brand new bike that I had saved up all my money for. I rode that thing from morning till night, from when I got out of bed until my mom called me inside for the day. Well, one morning I went outside to ride it, and it was gone. I couldn't believe someone had stolen the bike that I spent all summer vacation mowing lawns for. I phased on the spot, knowing right then that my life wouldn't be the same. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Vincent opened his mouth, but then the waitress came with our food. The plates were huge. It seemed as if our omelets were made with 10 eggs each, both of them overstuffed. They were set on the table, and Vincent, with one arm still around my shoulders, and one holding onto his trusty fork, set off to shoveling the food in his mouth. Now I'm sure Vincent meant for that story to have some sort of happy ending. Like he thought that being a werewolf would suck but then in the end he found out that he loved it. He probably meant to relate our werewolf experiences. Well, guess what? I'm never changing my mind about werewolves. Thanks to werewolves, I'm not allowed to leave the county. I haven't been out of the city limits in years. I'm not allowed to see my grandmother who lives in Florida, all because of the borders. I'll have to go to the college within our territory, never becoming a marine biologist, which has become my dream lately. Thanks to the werewolves, that's gone as well, and now I'm forever bound to a werewolf. I'll never get to lose my virginity to a man I've fallen in love with. I'll never get those butterflies when I like someone new. I'll never get to introduce my new boyfriend to my parents, having them grill him and then eventually accept him. I'll never have a baby. I've heard of werewolves and humans trying to get pregnant, but the pregnancy rates for them are often low. And when a human does manage to get pregnant, they give birth to a werewolf. All thanks to Vincent. I'll never get to have my own baby. No normal, human baby for me, but instead a monster if I'm lucky. All these disappointments about boundaries, relatives, college, and babies got me going for some reason. I felt my hands start to shake and a lump started to grow in my throat. No, I can't cry. Not in front of Vincent. His protective instincts will go all psycho and then he won't leave me alone for the whole frickin' day. That thought didn't help me at all. The lump grew bigger, and my eyes began to sting. A tear must have escaped, because I could feel the wet trail on my cheek getting colder as air hit it. Vincent, who was oblivious to my whole ordeal, stuffing his face, must have smelt my tear. He paused and sniffed at the air, turning to face me, a look of concern all over his face. Crap. Now I know what he's going to call me, and I know that when he does, I'll lose it. What's wrong? He asked. Okay, so he didn't say it. Thank God, mate. That did it. The tears broke through my restraints and my hands shot up to my face to prevent anyone from seeing me cry, especially Vincent. Vincent dropped his fork, letting it clang on the floor, his other arm wrapped around me. Just tell me how to fix it, he pleaded, his voice reeking of desperation. There was no way I could tell him why I was having this breakdown. He'd tell me that the boundaries helped to keep me safe. He'd say I could always just call my grandmother. He'd say that there was good science department at the college here. And he'd say he'd do everything in his power to give me a baby. EWW, mate. Vincent pleaded, giving me a little shake. Tell me what's wrong so I can help you. I shook my head, my hands blocking everything from my sight, which was nice. I didn't have to see the worried expression on Vincent's face. I knew that the fact that he was unable to help my pain go away killed him inside, but right now I could care less. All I wanted was to leave him in this place. Take me home, I sobbed, barely able to decipher my own words as they were strained with my choking cries. Of course, mate, Vincent said, making my cries louder. I heard him throw money on the table and then he lifted me up into his arms, carrying me out of the diner. I was really glad I had my eyes covered. I didn't want to see all the werewolves in the diner watching me cry. I was carried outside and gently placed in Vincent's truck. The door slammed shut and Vincent ran over to the other side and got in, hurriedly starting the truck. Within seconds I could hear Russ speeding down the road. Vincent put his arm around me for the 1,000th time, letting out a little whimper. Like puppy. I'll take you home, but I have to go to work today, so I won't be able to stay there with you, he said. Well, that certainly made me feel better. I just nodded. Before long, Vincent pulled up in front of a house that I didn't recognize. This is my house, he cleared up. He got out of the truck and walked over to my side, taking me up into his arms as if I weighed nothing. He walked up the path, taking me inside his house, a place I knew I'd have a hard time leaving. Wait, he said he had work, which means he'll leave me unsupervised for a few hours, which means I can escape. I can leave Vincent today. Issues Vincent's POV. As soon as I carried my mate into my house, which would eventually become our house, I gently placed her on the couch in the living room. I figured she could watch TV and be comfortable while I'm away at work. However, as soon as I set her down, I felt an instantaneous pang of loneliness in my core. I'll be back as soon as the school day ends, I promised her. She simply nodded, not looking at me. Stifling a whimper, I slumped my shoulders and left the house, making sure to lock the door on my way out. I had to figure out a way to get Nora to accept me as her mate. Surely she should know that I'm the best choice for her, as I'm the only man capable to love her at the level I do. All I have to do is find out what makes her happy. The whole drive to the high school I went over in my mind about how I would win over my precious mate and get her to love me at least a fraction of how much I love her. When I pulled up to the school parking lot, some of the human girls glanced my way, their eyes filling up with lust. I snarled at them, telling them that I'm taken. They took the hint and immediately turned their gaze to the ground. I fought the smirk that was coming to play on my face. If only Nora had seen this. Then she'd know how dedicated I am to her. I walked inside the school, heading towards the locker rooms to get my lesson plans for my first day as PE coach. Looking over my class assignments and students, my heart began to beat excitedly as I realized that Nora would be in my last class of the day. This is perfect. Now I can just hang out with her for the last school hour and then drive home with her, spending a majority of the day next to her. After that moment of pure bliss, the day went on rather uneventful. I introduced myself as Coach Ab to all my students and just had them run a mile while the human classes ran a mile. The werewolves had to run 5. When the last class of the day crawled to me, I frowned. This was supposed to be time spent with my mate, yet she's at home because she can't stand to be around me. The students filed outside to the field where they knew they'd have to run the mile, as this was a human class. I went up to them, after making sure that I had this period's roll call roster. Hello, class, I called in an automatic voice. I'm your new PE teacher, Coach Abin. Today, we're going to run the mile, and make sure you get it done under 20 minutes. I trailed off when the scent of minty gum filled my nostrils. It was similar to the scent of my mate. In fact, it was the same scent of my mate, almost as if she were here. However, the scent was faint enough that I knew she wasn't really here. Instead, she must have been in contact with one of these students in the near past. I deeply inhaled, walking towards my class, who stood dumbstruck, waiting for instructions. Vincent led me to the back of the group of teens, to a tall girl with bright red hair. She looked at me with a confused gaze. My Nora scent was on her, like they were friends or something. "You," I said to her. "What's your name?" "Jessie Saunders," the girl murmured, obviously thinking she was in trouble. "Stay behind," I ordered, an idea forming in my mind. I turned to the rest of the class. "Start running." The class took off, leaving just me and this nervous Jessie girl behind. "You smell like Nora," I stated, explaining why I had approached her. Understanding lit up Jessie's face. "Oh, you Ray the wolf that claimed her as his mate." "You're Victor. Vincent," I corrected. "But anyway, I need your help." "With what?" I looked around, making sure no other werewolves were nearby and could hear. It was considered embarrassing to a wolf to have their mate hate them. The werewolf PE class was in the gym, watching a presentation on sexual education and safety. I was safe to tell this human girl then. Nora is distant, and I need to get her to like me. Jessie nodded. "I'd love to help you coach Abin. I really would. But I have to run the mile. And when I run, I can't think straight. See my problem?" She smirked. I growled and leaned forward to intimidate her. Jessie didn't seem fazed. As I recall, she smiled. Alpha forbade werewolf from attacking humans on school grounds. Plus, Nora would hate you forever if I told her to. I stood back, shocked at this human's bravery in the face of a werewolf in line to be the beta. Nevertheless, I caved into her. "Fine. No more mile for you," I growled. Jessie's smile grew even wider. "Okay, so how do you need my help with Nora?" she asked. "I need to know how I can win her over." I was growing desperate. Sure, it's only been one day, but she won't even tolerate being in the same bed with me, as most mates do on their first night together. I wasn't going to try anything sexual. I just wanted to have her in my arms, keeping her by my side through the night. Jessie shook her head. Nora's afraid of the werewolves, ever since they revealed themselves. In fact, she has this plan to go. Jessie's eyes widened and she stopped talking. "What plan?" I urged, wanting to know if there was something that my mate was coming up with. "Tell me now." Jessie mumbled. She shuffled her feet and looked down at the ground. "I gotta go. Have my period." With that, Jessie ran off towards the girl locker rooms, leaving me both stunned and disgusted. Still, I needed to figure out what my mate was up to. As soon as I get home, I'll just have to confront her about it, demanding to know if she had any plans to leave me. A thought popped into my head and I pulled out my cell phone, sending a quick text to a friend that I knew would be of use to me now. Nora's POV, luckily for me. Vincent's house was easy to leave. As soon as he left to go to the school, I waited like 10 minutes and then just strolled out the door. It was rather anticlimactic, making me think about how much cooler it would have been if I had been required to make a rope out of bed sheets or had to run some guard dog. But nope. Instead, I walked out of the front door. I guess with nothing to do, I'll just go home and relax there. Oh wait. My brother's home sick today, which means my mom will be there taking care of him. Which means she'll wonder why I'm not at school today. Which means she'll eventually learn that I've been chosen to be a werewolf's mate, getting me kicked out of the house. I changed my direction and went walking in the direction of Danny's house. I suppose that her mate's sister will be there, and like what Danny mentioned in her text, she'll help me out. For $500, of which I don't have on me. Whatever, I still continued on my way to Danny's house, reaching it in a matter of minutes. I knocked on the door, and a tall male werewolf answered. He towered over me and ran his eyes over me, seeing if I posed a threat to his territory. I guess I must have been of no danger because he asked. Yes, in a gruff voice. I couldn't help but notice how large his canines were, poking out of his mouth when he stopped talking, reminding me more of a saber-toothed tiger instead of a werewolf. I'm Nora, Danny's friend from school, I nervously answered. At the mention of Danny, the werewolf's eyes wide and a brief smile came across his features. This must be Reed, Danny's mate. Danny, he called into the house. Footsteps down the stairs were heard, and then Danny poked her head around Reed's broad body. When she saw me, she smiled, looking a little surprised to see me here. Nora, what are you doing here? She asked. I noticed that Reed was standing with his body partially in front of Danny's. I actually know why he does this thanks to our Wolf Cultural Studies class. Because Reed has never met me before. He's unsure as to whether or not I pose a threat to his mate. Hence, by standing a little in front of Danny, he's acting as a shield in case I attack. I need a place to hide for the day, I said, narrowing my eyes so that Danny knew what I was talking about. Why don't you hide with your mate then? Reed asked. I looked up at him in confusion. I smell his scent on you, he clarified. Well, that sucks. He's at work. In a way, I didn't lie. Vincent was actually at work right now. And besides, Reed doesn't need to know that I'm hiding from my mate IW. Come inside, Danny said, pushing Reed to the side a little bit. I hesitantly walked inside her house and stood awkwardly in the living room that she led me into. I took a seat on the couch that Danny pointed for me to sit on. Reed followed us in, sitting next to Danny, an arm wrapped securely around her waist. The whole time he kept his gaze trained on me, as if he didn't trust me, which he probably doesn't. Crystal, Reed's sister, should be here tomorrow. She's out on business now, Danny said, giving me a look. So Crystal is helping someone escape a mate right now, as I'm talking to Danny and her mate. Then that got me thinking, does Reed know what his sister does? If he found out, how would he react? How would Vincent react if he found out my plans to leave him? No, I can't think of that. Vincent won't find out. I'll leave to Florida safely and without a trace. Then I'll be able to live a normal human life. Danny turned to Reed. Reed, I need to help Nora in her time of need, so I won't be going to school today. Could you put my backpack back in our room? She asked. Reed looked ecstatic that Danny wouldn't be going to school today. He eagerly nodded and picked up the backpack that rested against the couch and went upstairs. Reed doesn't know, so don't talk about it near him, Danny whispered. So Reed wasn't aware that his very own sister helps humans to flee their werewolf mates. Interesting. I nodded, keeping Danny's secret. I just have one little question, I whispered back. Danny looked around the corner, where I assumed the stairs were. She turned to face me and nodded. How do the werewolves react when their mates leave them? Thus leaving their mate? Reed asked, running into the room. A worried look was plastered all over his face, his hands shaking with apprehension. He turned to face Danny. Are you leaving me? The question was drenched in fear and pain. No. Danny hurriedly said, We're speaking hypothetically. She shot out of her seat and walked up to Reed, who immediately took her into his arms, keeping her tight against him. It looked as if he was trapping her there, just to make sure she could never leave him. Would Vincent keep me from leaving him? Most likely, yes. That goes to show I need to keep my escape plans as secretive as I can. I spent the whole day with Danny and Reed. Danny would talk about things at school and assignments she was having trouble with, asking for my insight. Reed never warmed up to me, making sure he was always physically in between me and Danny. I'm assuming that whole leaving mate's fiasco labeled me as a threat to his mating bond. We were watching TV when the phone rang. I'll get it, Danny said, standing up out of Reed's lap. Reed whimpered when she was out of his grasp, but let her walk into the other room to answer the phone. When she was gone, he turned to me, his lip curling up over his teeth, displaying his fangs, a clear sign of intimidation. Whatever. I rolled my eyes and looked back at the TV screen. Nora. Danny called from the other room. Your mom's on the phone. Now why would my mom be calling me here? I got off the couch and walked into the room where Danny was, taking the phone from her. Hello? I asked. Nora, I've called everywhere. The school called and said you never showed up. My mom shouted from the other line. Mom, I totally went. I guess the teachers marked me absent. I lied. Don't lie to me, Nora. Oh, and there's someone here who says he wants to talk to you. At that last part, my mom's voice sounded nervous. It was shaky and I heard her hand the phone to someone else. Nora Song, the other voice asked. It was a man, his deep voice reeking of authority and masculinity. Yes, he was this person. This is your alpha. I want to talk to you about my future beta. And your mate, Vincent Tabin. Alpha said, Oh my God. I was on the phone with Alpha, the most powerful werewolf in the territory. My breath hitched and I started to shake with fear. In the background, I could hear my mom flip out over me having a werewolf mate. I guess that secret's blown. What did you want to talk about? I quivered. I want her out. I want her out. That girl thinks she's gonna bring wolves into my family. No, she is gone. My mom shrieked in the background. Alpha sounded amused now. Well, I guess it's all settled. I'm going to box up your clothes and move you into Vincent's home today. Just go there when you're done playing at your friend's house. Yes, sir. I whimpered, fighting back the lump that was growing in my throat. Oh, and Nora, Alpha added. I should warn you that I know your type. What do you mean? Let's just say that if you try to leave the territory, I'll have the best trackers on your ass faster than you can reach the border line. Understand? I nodded, then remembering that I was on the phone said, Yes, sir. Alpha hung up. Thank you all so much for joining me on this dangerous werewolf journey. I hope you had your hearts pumping and your minds racing. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and come back for more exciting and dangerous tales. Until next time, stay safe and keep that adventurous spirit alive.